Hello, my name is Richard again today. I'm here to read this book, the Daily Reflections book, for October 8th, 2025. It's called Daily Inventory. And when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. That's from Alcoholics Anonymous, page 59. I was beginning to approach my new life of sobriety with unaccustomed enthusiasm. New friends were cropping up, and some of my battered friendships had begun to be repaired. Life was exciting, and I even began to enjoy my work, becoming so bold as to issue a report on the lack of proper care for some of our clients. One day, a co-worker informed me that my boss was really sore because a complaint submitted over his head had caused him much discomfort at the hands of his superiors. I knew that my report had created the problem and began to feel responsible for my boss's difficulty. In discussing the affair, my co-worker tried to reassure me that an apology was not necessary, but I soon became convinced that I had to do something, regardless of how it might turn out. When I approached my boss and owned up to my hand in his difficulties, he was surprised. But unexpected things came out of our encounter, and my boss and I were able to agree to interact more directly and effectively in the future. Period. The end of the reading. And my first thought of this today was like that. It just went right over my head, except for the but unexpected things. Because that got me thinking about something that I've said in one of these recordings. It has to do with fear, and it's a percentage thing where humans, at least this human, like here it's coming up again. This Friday night I got to go play drums, like live, in front of people, and I don't want to mess it up. So it can be it provokes anxiety on my part, from me, whatever. But I know it's going to be okay because I did it a month ago and it was fine and whatever. But so when I'm thinking of something in the future that's I need to do, that I feel unprepared for, say, I start to conjure up, imagine what might happen. And this morning I had this thought, at least for me, I'll imagine the absolute worst case scenario way over here on that end of the scale. And occasionally I'll imagine what's the best thing that could happen over here on this end of the scale. And it seems like I can conjure up and imagine a lot more negative things. And then that starts to gel in there. And then each time I think of it, it's like, oh, I start to feel even less prepared. Time is going by, even less prepared, more time goes by, still not feeling prepared. Okay, this kind of thing. And there's kind of maybe even a sense of dread connected with this thought. It sounds silly to me now, but I've been at all kinds of things like this for a long time, and this percentage thing that I'm just about to get to, because this is something else I read in a book. I hope I don't get too far off. Yesterday in the two-part thing, I brought up this book, Chop Wood, Carry Water, A Guide to Finding Spiritual Fulfillment in Everyday Life. And it's by 4 authors, or editors of the New Age Journal: Rick Fields with Peggy Taylor, Rex Weiler, and Rick Ingrassi. And I got to put that aside now. Okay, so remember I said I get some thought. I got to do something in the future. I may think I don't want to do it, or I'm excited, and then I start thinking, here's the worst that could happen, here's the better that could happen, the best that could happen. And it doesn't seem like there's as many good things I can think of as the negative things. And this is maybe part of the sense of dread that anytime I've got some new thing in the future, I'm just hazarding a guess here that that's how I go about thinking about it right away. It's like, oh, well, yeah, that sounds like fun. And that would be great, except maybe this will happen. And then I just start filling up that bucket of the negative stuff. And then the next day I wake up and start doing stuff. And then I think about this thing that's happening later. And maybe there's a sense of dread connected to it. Now, the percentage is that I read somewhere in a book similar probably to this one. Because I don't think in one of these books you're going to find this, what I'm about to say. That, remember now, this is all coming from these 2 words, but unexpected, from the reading. That most of it went over my head, except for the but unexpected. There's an 85% thing and a 15% out of 100%. And what is it? This bucket of the negative stuff that I was easily able to fill with imagined, not even real, just hardly a probability of these things happening. That's only going to occur maybe 15% of the time, and it's probably a lot less. It might even be 5%. I forget the actual statistics. But let's say, like, if you're at 50%, either or could happen just as equally. And then what's the next 25%? If it was 75%, you could start leaning towards it's really more likely to happen. And then at 85, 90%, it's like it's almost assured, except for like 10 cases out of 100 that it won't, or whatever. So the things that I worry about, and maybe the things that you worry about and become concerned with and start running through your brain over and over, and it just seems to get bigger and bigger and darker and deeper and harder and more difficult and more frightening, scary, impossible, these kind of things, it's probably less than 5% chance of that happening. And then you could just kind of go, well, maybe it's 15%. 85% of the time, we think it's going to turn out okay or something, and it usually does in some manner. Now this thing, though, about that 85% of the time, it comes about unexpectedly. Okay, and now this does have some utility here, I hope. That in doing this daily inventory, see now yesterday, October 7th was called Daily Monitoring. Continue to take personal inventory, ... And then in today's reading, the October 8th, it's a daily inventory. Yesterday was a daily monitoring. Today it's a daily inventory. And when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. This person says, I was beginning to approach my new life of sobriety with unaccustomed enthusiasm. New friends were cropping up and some of my battered friendships had begun to be repaired. Life was exciting, and I even began to enjoy my work, becoming so bold as to issue a report on the lack of proper care for some of our clients. One day a co-worker informed me that my boss was really sore because a complaint submitted over his head had caused him much discomfort at the hands of his superiors. I knew that my report had created the problem and began to feel responsible for my boss's difficulty. Period. In discussing the affair, my co-worker tried to assure me that an apology was not necessary, but I soon became convinced that I had to do something regardless of how it might turn out. Now right there, let me stop for hopefully just a brief second. This is kind of like what I was just talking about. When I get some idea or I've signed up for something or something's going to happen way down the road, 3 weeks from now, say, and I can feel really positive for a week and a half without even doing anything really. Just, oh yeah, it's still a couple weeks away, whatever, it'll be fine. But as the clock starts ticking and I start thinking about stuff, in discussing the affair, my co-worker tried to reassure me that an apology was not necessary, but I soon became convinced that I had to do something regardless of how it might turn out. This is this 85%, 15%, or 85 and 14 and 1% or something like that. 90% of the time, in some unexpected way, it's going to turn out okay, I guess would be what the rock bottom point I'm trying to get to. So we fill up this bucket of all these negative expectations of things. Say, now this could be like in step 8. And we're talking about a daily thing here, a daily inventory. It's exactly the title from today. And we look at what we did during the day. Or we, I don't want to get into this 85, 15% thing. Overwhelming amounts of the time. Maybe not overwhelming. Just about an overwhelming amount of the time. It's way more likely to, here, it's 100%, it's 90% likely to turn out in a manner that you can't predict. And then we come up 85% of the time, it comes out in a way that's favorable, but there's no way we could have figured that out. So all this time we spent dreaming up all the bad, ugly case scenarios, I'm going to say didn't happen and was not a waste of time, because I don't think there's a waste of time hardly at all, because you can learn at least that that was almost fruitless and I spent a lot of time on something that didn't work. You know, and then it didn't work in the way I expected. And at the bottom layer of everything for me, when I make mistakes and it's a failure and I get hurt, say, in any way, emotionally, physically, financially, that's a piece of data and I can use that. I can stick it in the computer up here and go, you know what? That was one way that I probably should not have tried to do that because I didn't like the result I got. Okay, so there's not a lot of waste. That's how I've been choosing to think about things for a very long time. Let me finish this here. When I approached my boss and owned up to my hand in his difficulties, he was surprised. But unexpected things came out of our encounter, and my boss and I were able to agree, that's awesome, to interact more directly and effectively in the future. This employee learned something, this employer learned something, that, wow, this what a solid employee I have. He owned up to making a bad mistake or something or whatever level mistake and made an effort to repair that. And I would gather, for the intention being, this employee didn't want to make that same mistake again. So, but unexpected things came out of our encounter, and my boss and I were able to agree to interact more directly and effectively in the future. Now, back to this 85%, 15% thing. If you're concerned, worried about something, and you start thinking about stuff, all that is probably valid. Some of it is so unlikely to happen, you can almost completely discount it. That would be like way down at the other end of one end of the scale. And let me just make a quick little picture here. If you can see this, did I get a line? It's hard to see. Let me get a marker, maybe. Something dark in color, please. See this line with a mark in the center and then an X on each end? Way over here is maybe the stuff that is not likely to happen. Somewhere closer to the center, it's more likely to happen. Now where those circles are, that might be a sweet spot. Combination of these are really the things I should be, or it's way more likely, or at least more likely, that these things in the circle area are going to happen. And then when it actually happens, that's this line in the center. This is what actually happened. You know, there's a lot more room on either side. And it's just, who knows what's going to happen. You can make some fairly educated guesses and get close to something. And then, like I said, at least in my experience, it seems like I dream up a lot more negative things. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to happen. They're maybe less likely. And then if I look at my little thing here, it's just as likely that some good things will happen too. And maybe I'm not inclined to think of the good things. I don't know why. For sure. But the thing is that I'm thinking about stuff that I don't have all the evidence. It hasn't happened yet. And then I start to live in the future, and that's kind of called anxiety. Because I don't know what's going to happen, and I get worried for my safety in all different manners. You know, physical, financial, whatever, emotional. So one day at a time. We got a book 24 hours a day, right? That the things we can do today. So now, like this Friday, I'm going to wake up, I hope. God should tarry and let me live until Friday, or however all that works. Friday night, I got the drumming thing again, and the nerves will be maybe up there a bit. Maybe not. I don't know. See, that's another thing. I don't know where they'll be at. And then I don't even know, you know, when I actually sit down at the drums that night and start to play, I don't know if it's going to be good or bad or what. I can do things, certainly, of course, to practice and make sure that I've got the highest likelihood of success. And, but I don't know. Chances are likely, 85% of the time, it's going to be okay. There might even be some unexpected thing. What did this person say? I like the way they put it. I was beginning to approach my new life of sobriety with unaccustomed Enthusiasm. New friends were cropping up and some of my battered friendships had begun to be repaired. Life was exciting, and I even began to enjoy my work. That's a nice change when that happens. So thanks for coming by here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this posted. Well, you won't know that. So thank you. Goodbye.